Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we are focusing all our attention on one of the, well, let's say most polarizing names in the global smart electric vehicle sector, NIO.
Definitely. It's a fascinating one.
Yeah, this company has been quite the case study, a perfect example, really, of operational excellence kind of running headlong into some pretty intense financial headwinds.
That's absolutely right. And our goal here is surgical precision, you could say. We pulled together a stack of sources covering NIO's record Q3 2025 performance, some critical balance sheet risks,
Right.
and the near-term catalysts that are looming over Q4. Ultimately, we're here to provide you, the listener, with a balanced assessment to tackle that core question: is now actually a good time to buy the stock?
Exactly. We want to give you that informed view, but, without the overwhelm. And hey, if you find this analysis helpful, please do hit that subscribe button and like this discussion.
Yeah, definitely helps us out.
It really does. We create this content for you, and we'd love to know which companies you want us to look into next. So please leave a comment below with your suggestions.
I'd love to hear them.
Okay, so let's unpack this. When we look at the operational side, specifically vehicle deliveries, NIO is undeniably hitting a massive stride. I mean, the story of success and operational resilience here, it's incredibly strong.
It really is.
What were the headline volume milestones that sort of define this success?
Well, the volumes weren't just strong, they actually set records. And this was happening even while parts of the Chinese EV market were seeing a broader slowdown. So the key number is the total Q3 2025 vehicle deliveries, 87,071 units.
87,000. Wow, that's a huge jump, right?
It represents a spectacular 40.8% year-over-year increase. And you have to remember the context here. Like you said, the Chinese EV market is facing intense deflationary pressure.
Right.
So to pull off nearly 41% annual growth, NIO clearly executed pretty flawlessly on its production ramp-up and, well, generating demand.
And that momentum wasn't slowing down heading into October either. We saw a single-month delivery record in September, didn't we?
Yes, exactly. September deliveries shot up to 34,749 vehicles. That's a massive 64.1% year-over-year surge.
64%.
Yeah. This sustained volume, it indicates two things, really. One, their ability to actually execute mass production has matured. And two, customer interest in their new models is just exceptionally high.
Okay.
And this execution, it means their cumulative global deliveries are now getting really close to that 1 million mark, 872,785 by the end of Q3 2025.
Now, what's fascinating here, I think, is that this volume growth isn't just, generic sales. It seems intrinsically linked to some highly strategic moves in their product lineup. Like, they launched the flagship all-new ES8 premium SUV.
Right.
Tell us why that specific model launch matters so much.
Okay, so the ES8 launch is critical because it solidifies their position right at the very top of the smart EV market. They aren't trying to compete directly with the mass market volume leaders.
Yeah.
They're targeting the luxury buyer. And the ES8, theoretically at least, should command higher average selling prices and, importantly, superior gross margins compared to their earlier models. It should help pull the whole average up.
Okay, that makes sense. And beyond the flagship premium product, they're also working on brand diversification with OnVio and Firefly. How do these new brands strategically fit into NIO's sort of longer-term vision?
Yeah, this is where the long-term structural thinking really comes in. NIO recognizes they probably can't rely solely on the high-end buyer forever. OnVio is designed as the more accessible volume play. It targets family EVs, which are, a massive segment in China.
Huge segment.
Exactly. The goal for OnVio is basically to capture market share and drive volume that allows NIO to achieve true economies of scale across its platform technology.
And Firefly, what's the angle there?
Firefly is almost the exact opposite of OnVio. It's targeting a niche, small, high-end, you might even say luxury city cars. Now, it won't move 80,000 units a quarter, obviously, but it diversifies their risk and potentially captures some high margins from a specialized, affluent, urban consumer base. So what we're seeing is a conscious strategy. The core NIO brand maintains that premium leadership, OnVio provides the mass volume, and Firefly captures niche high-end segments. They're basically strengthening their market coverage against, well, every potential competitor.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though, and frankly, maybe a bit confusing for the average investor looking at this. If their operational execution is setting records, right, If they're launching these flagship premium vehicles at the ES8, and if they're supposed to be achieving better economies of scale,
Yeah.
why are we seeing such intense investor scrutiny about profitability? It seems counterintuitive.
This is the central paradox, absolutely. And it's why NIO is such a high-stakes investment. I mean, look, the top-line revenue is healthy. $2.65 billion for Q3 2025. That's a solid 9.0% year-over-year increase.
Okay, not bad.
But, like you said, when you look at the bottom line, the picture is, well, it's pretty dire.
Dire might be putting it mildly. The sources we looked at cite a negative net margin of, what, 34% for the quarter?
34%, yeah.
And their earnings per share missed analyst expectations quite dramatically. How can a company growing this fast, launching premium products, be losing 34 cents on every single dollar of revenue? Doesn't that imply a fundamental flaw somewhere, maybe in the pricing strategy?
It points directly to the intense, almost cutthroat price war happening in the Chinese EV market right now.
Ah, the price war.
Yeah. Competitors, especially, the legacy players and the volume champions like BYD, they're engaging in really aggressive price promotions and cuts.
Right.
And that forces everyone, even premium players like NIO, to follow suit just to maintain market share.
Okay.
And those aggressive promotions, they just eat away at vehicle margins. It's brutal.
So the operational success is essentially being funded by maybe unsustainable pricing sacrifices.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
This leads us directly then to this concept of going concern risk. That sounds serious. Can you break down what that technical financial term truly means for, the average shareholder?
Yeah, it is serious. And this is perhaps the single most material risk for NIO right now. A going concern risk, basically, it arises when an auditor or an analyst believes the company might not have sufficient cash to meet its obligations over the next 12 months.
Wow, okay.
In NIO's case, it means they're operating with negative shareholders' equity.
And what does negative equity imply, practically speaking?
Well, it implies that their liabilities exceed their assets. So they're relying very heavily on substantial external capital, new funding rounds, debt issuance, or existing credit lines, often government-backed,
Right.
simply to fund their daily operations. And that Right.
Mm-hmm.
includes R&D, manufacturing expansion, running those NIO houses. Without frequent and successful capital raises, their liquidity could just, dry up.
Okay. So given that significant risk and the valuation spotlight, I mean, shares were around $7.90 with a nearly $8 billion market cap recently. Why are sophisticated institutional investors apparently still giving NIO an 8.5 out of 10 bullish rating in some of these sources? What keeps this company afloat when the gap numbers look so bad?
It's a great question. They're essentially looking past the immediate gap profitability.
Mm-hmm.
They're focusing on NIO's proprietary competitive moat. What makes them different?
Okay, like what?
First, the battery swapping technology. This is not just a service, it's really an asset. They're building a massive capitalized battery asset network.
Right, the boss model.
Exactly, Boss Battery as a service. Investors believe this model will eventually allow NIO to monetize its user base, even if vehicle margins stay low for a while, because it lowers the initial purchase price for the consumer.
Which is attractive.
Very. And it creates a sticky long-term revenue stream for the company.
So institutions are betting on the structural advantage of that asset network, maybe not the immediate profit on the car sale itself.
Precisely. That's a big part of the bull case. And the second differentiator is the NIO house service model.
Ah, yes, the NIO houses.
Yeah. This is their equivalent of, say, the Apple Store experience. It fosters really unmatched customer loyalty, especially in that premium segment. Now, it's expensive to build and run,
I bet.
but it's viewed as a strategic investment that creates significant barriers to entry for competitors. Plus, management fully expects that once their new models hit full scale, economies of scale will kick in. They anticipate margin improvement starting as soon as Q4 2025.
So they're saying relief is coming soon.
They are. And institutions are essentially betting that this structural advantage, the battery swapping and the service model, pays off before the liquidity runs out. It's a high-wire act.
It certainly sounds like it. Okay, so looking ahead, the next 3 months seem absolutely loaded with make-or-break events. What are the non-negotiable dates and maybe flow-driven events that investors absolutely must watch? The things that will almost certainly shape the stock price.
All right, Q4 is pivotal. The single most important date is October 24, 2025. That's the Q3 2025 earnings release.
Okay, the earnings call.
Exactly. This report will give us the first real clarity on gross margins. Did the record volume actually help margins at all? Or did the competitive price war completely negate the benefits of scale? The market needs to see evidence that management's Q4 margin improvement expectation is realistic.
Needs that proof. And then we shift into sort of market mechanics and institutional flows.
Yes, we have two major flow-driven events coming up. In November 2025, we have significant ETF rebalancing.
Okay.
And then in December 2025, we get the disclosures of institutional positioning, like the 13F filings.
And for the listener, what does ETF rebalancing actually mean in simple terms?
It means huge passive funds, index funds, they're forced to buy or sell shares based purely on index weights, not on company fundamentals.
Ah, okay. Not based on whether NIO is doing well or badly?
Correct. It often creates sharp, unpredictable volatility that can drive the price either way, completely, regardless of the company's own news flow at that moment. It's just mechanical buying or selling.
Got it. And beyond the official reports, the market seems highly focused on the October 2025 delivery report. What kind of number is the street anticipating there? Is there a magic number?
Well, magic might be strong, but the anticipation is definitely high. The expectation is that the October delivery report will approach 40,000 units.
40,000.
Yeah. If they hit, or better yet, exceed that 40,000 threshold, it would mark yet another record. And psychologically, it would provide substantial validation that the current operational momentum is still accelerating, that it's not plateauing.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's talk about the speculative drivers for a second. The rumors that, if they turned out to be true, could potentially unlock value almost overnight. What's circulating in the market right now?
Right, the rumor mill. There are three main speculative drivers people are watching. First, there's the perpetual rumor of a strategic partnership with a legacy OEM, maybe European or Japanese.
We hear that one a lot?
We do. Such a deal would potentially give NIO instant regulatory compliance and market access in Europe or Japan, unlocking potentially billions in geographic expansion value. So it's a big potential prize.
Okay. And what about the value spin-off rumor? That sounds interesting.
Yeah, that's perhaps the most compelling potential long-term catalyst. The rumors suggest they might spin off, or at least partially list, the battery swapping network.
List the batchless business separately.
Exactly. If they could successfully do this, they could transform that massive, costly asset base from being an ongoing operational expense on their books into a self-funded financial entity. That would immediately shore up their balance sheet and could help justify the high valuation placed on their technology.
That would be a game changer. Okay, and finally, let's quickly look at the technical snapshot. The price action, you mentioned around $7.90 as of early October, seems to suggest some resilience despite the headwinds.
It does, surprisingly so. The technical picture is actually quite bullish, reflecting that operational momentum we talked about. The stock is trading significantly above its key long-term moving averages.
Okay.
The 50-day average sits around $5.86, and the 200-day is way down at $4.53. Trading comfortably above those suggests that recent dips have been bought up pretty quickly, demonstrating short-term strength.
And the trading range, where's the current battle?
Yeah, the current technical trading range, which kind of defines the immediate battle zone for traders, looks established between roughly $7.50, which seems to be strong short-term support, and $8.40, which is acting as the immediate resistance level they need to break through.
All right, so what does this all mean then? When we connect the dots between the record sales, the negative margins, these looming catalysts, the technicals, the sources give this overall rating of 8.5 out of 10 bullish.
Yeah. Why is the confidence apparently so high despite that literal going concern risk we discussed? It seems like a huge contradiction.
It does seem like one. The 8.510 rating, I think, is really a measure of the asymmetry of the investment. The potential reward is just massive and it's a big if the risk is mitigated or overcome. The bullish rationale is really rooted in those structural advantages we talked about.
Okay, so can you summarize the bull case for us? Maybe in 3 key pillars?
Sure. First, it's that explosive, market-defying delivery growth and the clear success of the new model launches. It proves operational competence. They can actually build and sell cars at scale.
Pillar 1.
Execution.
Pillar 2. The bullish alignment of the technical indicators, volume, price, momentum, they're all generally pointing to the upside, at least in the short term.
Okay, technical supporting it.
And third, the multiple imminent catalysts, things like expected record deliveries, potential institutional flow events we mentioned, and that highly anticipated Q3 earnings report. Any one of those could spark a short-term re-rating before the year is out.
Multiple shots on goal, basically.
Exactly.
But every investor needs to understand the counter-argument, the risks. If you had to pick the single most material risk that demands continuous monitoring, what would it be?
It still has to be the capital structure. that going concern risk stemming from negative net equity. It just means the company fundamentally lives and dies by its ability to raise external funds.
Right.
This dependency on external financing is the core instability issue. It's not just a technical accounting thing. It means any major tightening of credit markets or maybe political headwinds affecting investment could quickly trigger a severe liquidity crisis.
Okay, so the financing risk is number one. What about the execution risk on the operational side? Is that still significant?
Oh, absolutely. That's the secondary material risk, I'd say.
Yeah.
Management has to execute flawlessly on scaling these new platforms on VO and Firefly. That's an incredibly capital-intensive process in itself.
Very expensive.
And they have to do that while simultaneously finding a way to stabilize and actually improve margins against that fierce price competition in China we talked about. If they fail to achieve margin discipline soon, it'll undermine all the impressive operational growth.
So it's a race between scaling up and getting costs under control before the money runs out.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, finally then. Given this tension, this real push and pull between operational strength and financial fragility, how should our listener think about the investment horizon here? Is this short-term, long-term, or something else?
Well, I think NIO is potentially positioned for both horizons, but they require very different strategies and risk tolerances.
How so?
For short-term players, maybe traders, it looks like an ideal catalyst trade right now. Playing the momentum around the Q3 earnings release or the upcoming delivery reports.
Playing the news flow.
Exactly. But for long-term investors, this is a much bigger structural bet. It's a bet on NIO becoming a global leader in premium EV tech and on the ultimate success of their unique asset monetization model with battery swapping.
The best model paying off eventually.
Right. However, and this is critical, given the deep financial instability, this must be treated as a highly risky position. Caution and really dedicated risk management are absolutely necessary regardless of your time horizon.
Okay, that's very clear. High risk, potential high reward needs careful handling.
Precisely. And maybe as a final thought for listeners to mull over.
Yeah.
The success of NIO isn't just a story about vehicle sales figures, right? It's also deeply intertwined with state-backed industrial strategy in China.
Good point.
Given the high level of institutional and, importantly, government ownership or backing, the real long-term indicator of NIO's future might not just be the enthusiasm of retail investors or even the monthly delivery numbers.
What is it then?
It might actually be determined by how evolving government policy continues to support them, or perhaps how sector consolidation strategically entrenches their premium leadership position relative to rivals, both domestic and international. That political and industrial context, that's what ultimately determines if this big risk actually pays off in the long run.
That's a crucial point. It brings the geopolitical reality right back into the financial analysis, doesn't it? A lot to think about there.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this analysis of NIO. Really appreciate the insights.
My pleasure.
And we encourage you, the listener, to check the show notes for links to the source material we distilled today. We'll catch you next time on Investing Talk Podcast.